Well, welcome everyone, and thanks for being here this afternoon. Again, we're waiting for the arrival of Jackie. She was having some internet issues getting logged in. But to start things off, the city officials have put together a little PowerPoint presentation for us. So I think we'll go ahead and let them go through their little PowerPoint. And then they were also kind enough to pass our questions around through, sounds like the entire city, and got some answers to our questions, which we will share with you all in the membership after the meeting. But for now, I guess we'll kick it off. And Brett, are you going to take the reins, or Nikki, are you going to run us through this?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start us off here. Nikki, if you can move to the next slide and pass this one. Those are the introductions that the mayor was going to make for us. So let's go to our agenda, and we'll cover some items here that I think are somewhat duplicative of what the questions that you asked us to answer. And so hopefully we'll get to some of those points in the PowerPoint. But I did want to get our subject matter experts in the city to answer your specific questions, because I'm a development director, but I don't always know all the answers. So I wanted to make sure we went directly to the source to get you those answers. So those will be sent out to you, and we can cover that ground after the PowerPoint as well. So what we're going to do is talk to you kind of quickly about what we see are some of the challenges and the trends, at least that we're facing here at the city with respect to home building. We'll have Sam cover some of the building permit data from last year and to date. Bob will take over, and he'll talk about some residential projects that are in the pipeline, and also about attainable housing. And then I'll take over at the end here again, and we'll talk about kind of what's on the horizon and a couple of planning projects that we would like your input on. So let's go.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you, Brett. I did want to add one thing. Excuse me for jumping in, but I did want to add one thing to all those of you that are on the call. If you do have questions as we go along here, be sure and use the chat section over on the side. Drop your questions in the chat, and we'll review those. And as we get to the end of the presentation, we can circle back and maybe answer some of those questions. So thank you again, Brett.
Okay, Nikki, let's move forward. Okay, on this slide, you'll see what we consider to be some of the more exciting trends and challenges, I guess you'd say, with our line of work. And so we're going to have the mayor cover this, but since she's not available, I will do that for her. Let's first of all start off with the trends. As many of you know, home building is up. We are seeing a tremendous amount of building permit activity. Bob's office, which is the current planning office, is seeing many more land use entitlement applications as well. And so we'll go over a few numbers with you shortly. What we're also seeing in the industry are smaller lots. And so kind of the days of the 7,000 square foot lot are not over, but in order to get the products to become more affordable, we're seeing things, down in the 5,000 square foot range. And then our new Unified Development Code allows you to go down to 3,500 square foot lots for detached products as well. We're seeing a lot more attached products. So that's, townhomes, paired homes, multiple family projects as well. We have gone ahead and made some changes to our accessory dwelling unit requirements and regulations. And so this is, we're actually getting a lot more applications for these, and there's a lot of benefits, of course, for the individual homeowner. Number one, it gives them an additional space for someone in their family. They can also rent it out to help kind of subsidize their mortgage costs as well. Additional benefits here would be that you can hook onto your existing water and sewer lines. You don't need to have separate meters and separate lines for these. And in addition, since we don't believe that these units will have more than 2 folks in them, we don't charge any CEFs for them. And so those impact fees, if you will, are gone. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of reinvestment in downtown. The Foundry was the last project that we just completed, and we've got some additional items that are kind of in our wheelhouse right now. We're doing conceptual review with some of the purchasers of downtown lots. So that's exciting to see. And what's different about Loveland is you don't see the growth occurring in one quadrant of the city. It's scattered in all of the various quadrants. So that's good news and gives our buyers a little bit of variety. What are the challenges? Well, when we go to smaller lots, we have challenges with our utility hookups. I mean, traditionally, we wanted our water and power folks want everything to come in off of the street. And when you get into these smaller projects and smaller product types, we have to be a little bit more creative about how we're servicing the individual units. So we, to the best of our ability, are going to try to create some prototypes, but a lot of this is just going to have to be on a case-by-case basis, just because the products are changing rapidly, and we want to be responsive to that. Affordability, always a challenge. Unfortunately, wages have not been able to keep pace with the cost of housing, and so a lot of people just simply aren't qualifying anymore, or it's taking more people to qualify. So that's a challenge for us. Land, water, construction costs. You all know that those prices are going up, whether it's for wood or water or the cost of land. All of those things are adding costs to the houses. Sam has just finished updating our building code. We're now in the 2018 code. 2021s have just come out. They come out every 3 years. And so she'll talk to you a little bit about that. But as the codes come out, there are obviously new requirements that the International Code Council wants us to integrate into the house. Let's talk about processing of applications. Right now, we have adequate staff to do that. Not only the inspections in the field, but the plan review and the building permit review. What we'll talk to you about a little later is how many things we think are coming online. And if all of those hit at the same time, that's great for our customers in the home building industry, but we're going to have to take a look at whether or not we go out, for example, to a third party to backfill some of the additional personnel that we're going to need to match basically the expectations. And then finally, and this is one that Mayor Marsh wanted to address, was population demographics. And in her mind, we have a lot of folks, especially in the core of our town, that have decided to age in place rather than to go out and buy new housing product. And so that does two things. One of which is it's hard to buy an existing house in some of our existing neighborhoods, and they're also very expensive. And so that basically forces a new home buyer out into the new communities. And that's not as much a problem, especially for the Home Builders Association, but for those who may want to live closer into downtown, that is kind of an issue. So that in a nutshell was what the mayor was going to cover. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Samantha. And Sam, could you cover some of the building permit activity?
Yes, good afternoon. I have on the screen showing you our building permit activity since 2015, which 2020 unbelievably was our busiest year in the middle of all of the COVID and the protocols. So I have on here the January building totals were about 80 residential units in 2020, and we are at 66 for 21. And there we go. And I just got the numbers for February. We had 33 residential units and total 245 permits. So we are definitely steady. We are continuing to be busy. January and February are typically our slower months, and that we have not had that. So our anticipation is that we will maintain this all the way through spring. So as Brett said, we will have to reevaluate what that means for our staffing and how we will keep up with the influx of applications, because we are currently keeping up with those. You can go to the next one, Nikki. Thank you. So some of the challenges that we have in the middle of being busy is we did update our Title 15 to the 2018 ICC codes. We are also already looking at the 21 amendments. My goal is to continue to stay at least a year behind the updated codes from the International Code Council. And the reason for that is the codes are becoming more buildable, less cost restrictive. They're really looking at that. The HBA actually does a study every year on the cost impact from each code cycle. And I think 15 to 18 was the first code cycle that the impact actually went down on building. So the goal is to continue that trend to reduce the cost in building. So as long as that is happening, we will evaluate each code as they come out, and then propose that to the Construction Advisory Board. And then they would make recommendations whether to go to council. So we have started that 21 review. We also decided that we will do that review in conjunction with Fort Collins, Larimer, and Larimer counties. Safe Built and Pro Code will also be represented in those in that review committee, as they make up some of the smaller municipalities in northern Colorado. And our goal is to become more consistent. So that way we're easier to build in all 3 municipalities. I know a lot of builders have that gripe that they don't have the same requirements. So that is one of our goals, is to become more aligned with our local jurisdictions. And we are going to be doing that same thing with the contractor licensing, because that is another thing that we get a lot of information that is very different from Fort Collins to Larimer to Loveland. And we would like to make that also easy and more consistent. We just completed our ISO audit, which, if you're not aware, the Insurance Services Office will audit every building department every 3 to 5 years. And then we will get a rating based off of what code we have, our adoptions, our staffing, and that rating will determine insurance rates, if they are up or down. And we just completed that. Sorry, I saw the question. The ISO audit did not come back yet. We just completed it. So we'll still wait for that information, but as soon as it is available, it will be published on our website and available to everyone. And during the code updates for the 18, we decided that we are going to update all of our applications, all of our process pretty much improvements. So if we will be doing outreach. I know we did meet with some builders last week with the HBA, but we also will be doing some outreach to get information from our community on anything that we do need to update and change, as well as get out what the 18 adoption amendments would look like and those changes that will be occurring. So if anyone has questions, that's all I have for my portion.
Well, I did see one question come in. It looks like it's aimed towards you, Samantha, or intended towards you. Larry Buckendorf was going to ask that question. Larry, did you want to come in and ask about the representatives?
Hi, Samantha. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good to see you again. Are there going to be any building industry representatives on the joint review committee?
Yes, we will be requesting building representatives, architects, engineers. There will be an ask coming out soon. I just met with CAB on Wednesday, so we didn't compile that list yet, but it'll probably be on our website. I'll make sure you get that information.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Brett, did you have some more on the slides that you wanted to present?
Yeah, I think Bob will be next, and so he wants to cover a few items, and then I'll follow up at the end.
Okay, thank you, Brett. First thing I'd like to talk about is, looks like I'm getting some feedback here, but I'll continue. A resource that we have available on our website called the Current Development Activities Map. For those of you who have never looked at it, it gives you a snapshot, an interactive snapshot of building activities and development activities in Loveland. Basically, within the city limits, indicates by various icons what types of activity are occurring from a development perspective, not the building perspective, but entitlements. And you can click and hover over these icons and find out a lot of information about the specific applications. You'll find out who the planner is, who the applicant is. You can, in many cases, pull up a plat or a site development plan and find out a great deal of information. We were going to try and get this up and running on the screen, but I think it takes up too much memory to do that in this setting. So, but if you ever are interested, this will give you a snapshot of a lot of information very quickly, geographically based and interactively based. Next slide, Nikki. Okay, just a kind of a glimpse of some of the projects that are under construction, and certainly not a full list of all the residential projects, but some of the larger ones. You'll see that ranging, like Brett said, geographically around the town, there's quite a bit out at the lakes at Centera, in the Vandewater area. Mr. Buckendorf would know about that one. Also, we're starting to see things happen in the northwest area of town. John Giuliano's project at Wilson Commons, we're starting to see permits come in from Aspen Homes on that area. John's put in a bunch of infrastructure there, roadway and other infrastructure. So Eagle Brook Meadows is another one on the north end of town. But what, again, we're seeing is a lot of activity, especially for this time of year, as Samantha has indicated. And we look forward to a very busy spring and summer season here. You can go to the next slide, Nikki. Here's a list of residential projects that are in the pipeline, so to speak, in the development review arena, but have yet to come to fruition in terms of on-site construction. Again, these projects range geographically, they range in size. Again, a lot of them are in the northwest area of town, but you can see by the map on the right, the two maps, there's activities in the southwestern portion of town, Water's Edge by Ryan's Gulch. We're going to have an application coming to the Planning Commission from Drapek on Aspen Knolls. It was a former KB home site. The map on the bottom part of the screen is the large master planned area. McWhinney is initiated, called Kinston. It's multi-product type, predominantly residential with a little bit of commercial. But we have, again, projects ranging in the community, ranging in size, ranging geographically. As Brett indicated, if all of these projects start coming in at approximately the same time, we're going to be really pushed to keep up with our review of the projects. So we're excited about that. Also a little bit leery, but one of the things that we've experienced here in Loveland is perhaps a little bit slower activities in the home building arena in the previous several years than some of the surrounding communities. And I think at this point, we're seeing that a lot more residential lots are going to be coming available, and we are going to be working very quickly to keep up with demand. At least that's what's expected. Both Sam and Brett have indicated that. You can go to the next slide, Nikki. So one of the things that we're always interested in Loveland is attainable and affordable housing. Here's a list of some of the projects that we're currently dealing with. As you probably know, the Edge project, the second phase, is underway. Grace Gardens, a habitat project with 56 units in the southern portion of the community, is planning and moving ahead in that sense. Wilson Commons, which I mentioned already, we're going to have some affordable homes, 56 duplex lots. I believe Aspen Homes is working on those. And One of the things that hit the press recently, and it's not going to be a project that's coming in the door for quite some time, another year or so, is a supportive housing complex at the police and courts facility on 11th Street, not in the police and courts facility, but adjacent to it. And there's going to be 55 unit apartments there, something that Catholic Charities out of Denver is working towards. And that should be a sizable contribution to the community. You know, one of the things that we are continuously aware of and concerned about is the cost of housing. And with land, water, construction, all those factors that Brett mentioned increasing in terms of cost, we're glad to see that there's affordable units. And I do see Jackie, our mayor here, has joined the group. So welcome, Jackie. So I think that's it for me, Nikki. And on to Brett.
And Bob, I had
Yes.
a quick question with regards to the
Sure.
Wilson Commons project there. It looked like there might be a few in that affordable housing, the 56 duplex lots. Will those be for sale or for purchase units?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yep.
And welcome, Mayor Marsh.
Hi, thank you. Sorry to be late. Yeah, interesting. I'm in Zoom meetings all the time. This is the first one I haven't been able to get into.
Well, we're glad you're here, and we're just kind of finishing up the slideshow presentation, and then if we can, we'll move into just, you know, I know these questions you already went through and answered some of these questions, but we'd sure like to have, you know, your take on some of them as well, personally. So,
Well,
Brett,
yeah,
you want to go ahead and
appreciate,
finish up? Thank you.
yeah, appreciate you having us today. That's great. Thank you.
All right, I just wanted to cover a few things that we see coming in the future. Bob just covered the ones that are already in the door. And then I'll cover a couple of interesting processes that are going on besides that. So if you look at this slide here, this is something we've been working on for about a year. There are 6 individual developers in this purple area, and it contains about 1,000 acres, and they're currently proposing about 2,500 to 3,000 new dwelling units. The reason this area hasn't popped before is because we needed to construct a new pump station. We didn't have enough water pressure on the western side of town to get this area energized. And so this is roughly located between Wilson and the Devil's Backbone. And then it goes essentially from 22nd all the way up to West 57th. Just for size of scale, you can see down at the bottom the kind of vibrant green area. That's Mahaffey Park. And right next to it is our solar panel field. And then right above that, there's a round dot, white one. That's the new water tank and pump station area. And so what we're planning on doing is going into a design of the pump station and the water and sewer infrastructure this year. We'll shoot for installation the following year in 2022, and then this area will open up for residential development. So it's a very exciting project. And I know the developers that we've been working with are actively trying to find builders for this project. So I wanted to cover that one real quick. And Nikki, if you can go ahead and hit to the next slide, please. There's some questions that you had about infrastructure. And so the next 2 slides will somewhat cover that. What I wanted to let you know, for those of you who don't know, is our Public Works Department is working on a multimodal transportation plan called Connect Loveland. They have gotten through the initial rough draft of that document, and they're going to go out for public outreach this spring. So they don't have the dates set yet, but if you can keep your eyes open to the Public Works website, they'll let you know when those public outreach meetings are going to be. And no doubt they'll be very similar to what we're doing here today, which is a Zoom meeting. And then if you go onto their website, also, these are a little small, I realize. I just wanted to let you know kind of what they look like. But on the website, you can pull these maps up so you can actually read them. And then you can also read the draft plan. And so I wanted to invite you to participate in this process. And we will keep you posted as this moves along. So Nikki, can you go to the next one?
Well, stay here for just one
Okay.
second. So the idea is that, you know, people will be able to take multiple types of transportation to get around for work or leisure. And so you might take a bike to the bus stop. In the bus stop, we're going to have more 30-minute routes, you know, every 30 minutes, a higher frequency, you know, more routes and more back and forth. So the idea is that not everybody has to get in a car by themselves to get someplace. And you'd have a lot of ways to get there. So we'll be connecting paths to Berthoud. We'll be going out east to Johnstown. We already connect with Fort Collins in our bike paths on 2 different bike paths. The idea is that people will have a lot of choices. And when you think about the younger generation and jobs, that's one of the things they look for, you know, in terms of where they're going to locate a company, because not everybody wants to be in a car by themselves. And so we're trying to accommodate the future.
Very good point. Okay, Nikki, let's go to the parks plan. If you talk to Elizabeth Kale, and this is our existing parks plan, she's saying, well, it's time to go gear up and amend this plan because, you know, for the most part, we've accomplished everything in this existing plan. And so that's great news. I mean, you can see that the trail loop all the way around the city in red. You can see the various open spaces and park spaces that have been created. And so they're ready for an update. Obviously, we have the new trail connections going up into Fort Collins that were accomplished over the last 1.5 years. And so that's very exciting to have that connectivity with the other jurisdictions. And so she likes to take on projects. And so more things to come. And this, when she goes through that update process as well, she'll be reaching out, of course, to do public outreach too. And so we'd like you to be a part of that as well. Did you have anything else on this, Jackie?
No, just really proud of our team. A lot of good additions. Candace Volker in our transit, Mark Jackson, a lot of good people working together.
All right, I think we've got just one more slide here. And this is kind of the last frontier for Loveland. And so we just recently created a amendment to our comprehensive plan for the 402 corridor. And that's what you'll see up here. So essentially everything south of 402 between 287 and I-25, that's about a little over a 4-mile section of roadway. And then it goes all the way down to 60. Everything that's shown in yellow, either the 2 shades of yellow or the green, those are specific to residential home construction. So that's what the future land use map says those should be. And then the pink areas are mixed use, which can also contain residential, hopefully within a mixed use building. This area has many challenges, of course. It's kind of the last green fields left in our community to the south. And so what we need to have is developers out in this area doing property acquisition and consolidation so that we can do the annexation and zoning of these properties efficiently. In order to do that, we're going to have to look at different financing mechanisms to extend water and sewer service out there, because we don't have any out there right now. This is the Little Thompson district. However, they have agreed in many cases to let our water and power department service this area because they are traditionally a rural service provider and they don't have the capacity to do commercial development or large residential developments. You know, I'm not sure if our water and power department is going to do a special improvement district or a GID, but that's something that we're looking at because that's a very expensive prospect to create the lift stations and put the main trunk lines in. And of course, the highway in its current state is just 2 lanes. And we need, the plan calls for 2 to 3 lanes in each direction. So we'll have to do major reconstruction of that road corridor, either with CDOT or have CDOT do that. And then maybe we devolve that road. And those discussions will happen in the future. Lastly, we can, in the hatch mark across the top of 402, you'll see the existing floodplain. Well, we have new FEMA floodplain maps, and that floodplain now crosses across 402. And so we have some issues with our bridge structures not being wide enough, and that's why the floodplain is so wide. So we're gonna have to take a look at our infrastructure out there and see if this is a matter of channelizing the Thompson or a combination of that with expanding the bridge structures. And then lastly, obviously we've talked about downtown, and then there are lots of enclaves that are still in Larimer County within the portions of the city, and you'll continue to see that activity as well. And Nikki, I believe that's the end of our presentation, and we are more than welcome to answer any questions you might have.
Sure, and just to reiterate, be sure and, if you've got some questions as we go along, be sure and log those in the chat room over there, and then we can call on you to ask those questions as we go through. But I think this is a good time to formally introduce our mayor, the mayor of Loveland, Mayor Jacki Marsh. I know you've been involved with the city council since 2014, and of course a local business owner in downtown, and I know you're passionate about the job, and I think pretty well loved in the city of Loveland through its people. I know my aunt still lives in Loveland, and thank you for continuing to consider us and the home builders, and it sounds like some things are really starting to develop in Loveland, and there's some things that you're doing positively. And my first general question was kind of one of those to open it up and say, what do is this the policies and procedures and steps that you've taken over the past few years that have been successful to help stimulate this growth in Loveland? Can you elaborate on that a little bit for us?
Well, I think the city as a whole, staff and council, have worked hard for affordable housing, whether that's attainable for everybody or not, a different question. But we've invested, millions of dollars into, fee waivers, enterprise, water and sewer, waiving development fees, permit fees, things like Habitat for Humanity, our Loveland Housing Authority, most recently our very first, quite honestly, homeless kind of overnight, it's not an overnight shelter, it's more of a permanent housing for people that are homeless and will not likely get back on their feet right away, so they may live there for a long period of time. We're doing that with the Catholic Charities over by the courthouse. Habitat typically builds about 6 or 7 homes per year. We've been working obviously with Aspen Homes. You probably have the list of people that we have been working with. A few years ago, about 2 years ago, on a visit to the National League of Cities, when we visited with HUD, the Department of HUD, and we talked about the Community Development Block Grant, they made us aware that Loveland was part of a large conglomeration of cities. So Denver was its own district, and then there was a district in the south, and Loveland and Fort Collins and all of us were lumped in to a joint district. What that did is it gave us a very small voice. The larger communities had a bigger voice. So we worked with HUD to create our own district, a brand new district, that is Fort Collins, Loveland, and Greeley. So by combining our populations, we created a new district. Now we'll be able to better direct those funds that we get from HUD to serve our needs, which are different than the needs of the other communities we were formerly combined with. So that's been that took effect about a year ago that we finally had some say over our own destiny of those funds. So I don't know if I answered your question or not.
You gave us an
The
idea.
obvious- Yeah,
And by the way, for all those that are on the call, we do have the written answers that came back to us from
Okay.
the city officials and everyone too. So we'll share those with everyone else, because there are a lot of
Okay.
other things there. And I know that some of the advancements that are coming online now in Loveland do entail maybe some folks that are granting land to you as well. I think there's a couple of church groups that are granting land, and that's an excellent way to hopefully apply that to that attainable housing level. Because that, as a mortgage guy, qualifying people to buy their own home is paramount in my world. And watching young families, especially from where I live in Fort Collins, watching young families that work at CSU and at UC Health, the old Poudre Valley H, where Dougie Braden was born, having to buy a home out in Johnstown because it's big enough for their family because they can't afford to buy one in Fort Collins. Those are tough because they're increasing their carbon footprint by having to drive every day to come into work. Those are the kind of things we're trying to avoid. So I like the focus on other modes of transportation to get people to their jobs. That's good.
well, we definitely need more diversity in the housing that we offer to people. In fact, somewhere in here, it talks about that, we're not seeing the transition of people from our older neighborhoods. And I think one of the things that happens is seniors want to age in place. They live longer, they have healthier lives. So they're basically stuck in those homes in the older neighborhoods, possibly a home that they raised their family in. And those older homes don't really fit the current lifestyle of a senior. They're bigger yards, they're more expensive utilities, property tax. And it prevents the next generation with the children from moving into those older neighborhoods that have the bigger yards and are close to our older schools. So we end up closing schools in our older neighborhoods and building new ones in the newer. So to develop some housing that works for seniors. The Village Co-op is an example on Taft and 43rd. It doesn't work for everybody because not everybody can afford the huge down payment. But it does work for a segment. The ADUs that we're now allowing. So, my son happens to live in Fort Collins, but, in theory, they could build an ADU for me to live there, but if they were in Loveland, and duplexes and, more variety, so that seniors can age in place. Need to be near transit lines, because at some point my son's going to take my driver's license away. I need to get around on a bus. A lot of it's just really practical stuff,
Sure, sure.
and you have people that are choosing not to have families, so their needs are different. So just variety, and I think our planning department has done really good in giving us more possibilities, smaller lots, higher density. Again, more attached units, more, ADUs for us is new. So
And I'm
very
glad
exciting.
you're embracing the smaller lots and higher density, because that's one of the things that always is the NIMBY. I don't want it in my back. Yeah, it's great. I want it somewhere else, but not in my backyard. We see a lot of that in Fort Collins. Well,
I think that might have worked in the past, but not in the realm of not affordability.
yeah,
You just can't have everybody has a 1/4 acre lot. That just is not going to work in northern Colorado anymore.
not if they're going to buy. Well, I was unable to attend the town hall that I see is noted here about in our question with regards to metro districts. So you did a little town hall with metro districts. Could you maybe give us a little update on how that panel went and what the acceptability is and how you feel about metro districts as a tool to help maybe reach that attainable housing level?
Well, you're never going to like my answer on this one, but so we had an overall presentation by staff, which staff always does a great job on that. And then we did breakout rooms. So I was in one of 3 breakout rooms. I'd say the virtually all of the feedback from people living in metro districts in Loveland was not favorable. Surprised by how high their taxes are. Many claiming that they weren't properly noticed before buying, that that would happen. Lack of accountability, lack of transparency. That was a lot of the feedback that we got in the breakout room that I was in. My own take on disclosure, if I'm buying a house, I need to know what my costs are gonna be. Especially at my age, I'm retirement and whatnot, I need to know what I can afford. I need to know how much debt is owed for the infrastructure, so that I know I'm looking at a house that's 350,000 and there's another 40,000 owed in infrastructure. That's something I need to know. I don't think that's made very clear to people right now in metro districts that are buying. So that's something that I think could help so that people aren't surprised down the road. I would be interested in the city and builders and banks getting together and having a conversation about possibly an alternative method of financing. Right now the metro districts are funded, 30, 40 years out. Okay, that gets very expensive. What if you did short-term bonds? What if instead of a 40-year bond, you're looking at a 3 to 5 year bond? And so the city is going to end up owning this infrastructure, the roads, the sidewalks, the sewer, the electric, we're going to own it all, right? What if it was a development that the city embraced? We think we've got a lot going on in the Northwest. We embraced it. We agreed to, now I don't have anybody's permission on council or any staff people, so don't blame anybody else for this. This is Jacki's thinking here. What if the city were to back those short-term bonds? So that when a builder builds, he's paying the cost of the constructions of the home, but he's been able to bond, he or she's been able to bond the infrastructure. When a person goes to buy the home, they get with their bank and the title company. They arrange the lowest interest rate that they can get based on their credit history and their, job revenue and everything like that. When they buy the home, they are buying the home and they are paying off their share of the infrastructure bond. So if you think a development might be fully developed in 3 to 5 years, probably shorter than that, that bond is repaid very quickly. And you go back to the method of home ownership, where the mortgage is the home and the infrastructure. So the title company is going to write 2 checks, one to the builder for the house and one to the bond carrier for that house's share of the infrastructure. The homeowner gets 1 mortgage. It's just a thought, but I think we need to come together and have a conversation of how to finance the infrastructure without creating a situation where the home buyer can't afford to stay in the home. Because every time the house appreciates, their property tax goes up and their metro fees go up. That's just a thought.
I'm not sure the metro fees are impacted by the increase in property values, but that's for some of the guys on the call that are dealing with metro districts, maybe to answer that one rather than me. I know from my standpoint as a mortgage originator, we hear a lot of those complaints too about homeowners associations. And we get the same kind of feedback about HOAs that have the same commonalities with those kind of service-oriented issues that go along with them too. I didn't really see some response back there. So I did want to kind of move on and be respectful of time here. We've only got a few more minutes left. As far as the recent developments in raw water, it sounds like Loveland is maybe having some success in delegating that raw water usage. And I know the city had a meeting recently about that. Could you tell us a little bit more about some of the developments that might have come from that?
Yeah, I think the city staff has really pushed hard to keep it affordable, for everybody, especially our developers, allowing developers to determine when they pay for the water fees. They can pay for it up front or they can pay down the road as they're developing. We took a look at water usage. And if you think about all the water efficient appliances and toilets and showers that we have, we found that people weren't using as much water as we thought. So we went down by 0.1.
Right.
Yeah, so we reduced that, and we were looking at, bringing the water rates up and realized that that would be very harmful for developers. So we kept it about, I think it's 44,000 or 40,000.
Yeah, because the existing Big Thompson water right is in the 60s right now. And so we've decided to freeze it down in the 40 range. So it's a nice 20,000 odd dollar discount as opposed to where we were headed.
And I think that puts us quite a bit below, say, Fort Collins. And then, of course, Chimney Hollow has been an ongoing legal battle. And the ruling that came in our favor was just recently appealed. So it'll probably be about another year delay. In that regards, on Chimney Hollow, Platte River Power Authority is probably the biggest investor in that. Platte River Power Authority announced that they're going to close their coal plant by 2030, which would typically mean you don't need all that water that they have, signed up for. But they are going to continue on the path of being the major shareholder. And basically, in my opinion, I'm putting my own words to this, become more or less a water bank by preserving the rights to that water, which could in theory be sold to the community as time goes on. So that's one. And then we're developing the Great Western Reservoir, which is more on the east side of town, the Kaufman Ranch area. While it's basically a depression that needs to be lined so we don't leach out all the water that we're trying to store there. And then there'll be like a recreation trail, open lands around it. So to be both, for people to enjoy the great outdoors as well as storing water. So those are some of the things we're working on in the water area. Obviously very necessary.
Well, good. The impact on cost is huge. So seeing that consciousness about keeping the water costs down is fantastic. I think just from this government affairs chair's point of view. I did want to touch maybe a little bit on the inclusionary zoning. Again, everybody on the call hasn't had a chance, an opportunity to read your responses to inclusionary zoning and the pros and cons and how you feel about it. One of the first things that I would mention is that I was in a development, a meeting with developers and builders in the Fort Collins Affordable Housing Task Force. And they were listing a few items up on the board of ways to approach the attainable affordable housing. And of course, inclusionary zoning was one of them, and different types of items on there. And then of course, the third item on there was, to pay the fee in lieu of. And, I walked up to the board and I pointed to those three and I said, of all you builders and developers that are in the room, of all these choices up here, which one are you going to pick? And all of them said, we'll pay the fee in lieu. And so, the unfortunate part about that is that, well, it maybe builds up a base of funds somewhere, but it doesn't get the product built. And so I'm a little bit concerned that, and I think in Boulder, sometimes that, the builders just give up the money and just say, yeah, well, that's okay. We'll just build a $4 million house and pay the fees in lieu.
So, I think the city of Loveland needs to have the conversation of inclusionary housing. Sam Betters, who used to be with our housing authority, agrees that the price and the rate of growth, he agrees that we need to have that conversation. My questions for you would be, if the city were to, waive fees on some of those affordable units, the ones that, you would build that are more affordable, or if we could be creative on attached units, ADUs, smaller units for those, the idea is we want mixed neighborhoods, so if you were to develop a little street of cottages, how could we work with you that we don't want you to lose money on this. I mean, who would do that? But could we work together to meet our overall needs of needing a diversity of housing and create some that are affordable so that we don't have people, driving, we want people to live, work, and play in Loveland. So, and we want people to age in Loveland. So, is there a way that all this can come together? Things that we could do to make it worth your while to build some affordable.
Well, I think that does need to be I think all of those tools need to be part of the conversation. And I'm glad to see that, the Loveland and the city council is starting to embrace some of those ideas and bring those together. And again, I want to be respectful of everybody's time today, and we're at about the 3 o'clock point here. I do want to open it up again to everybody. If there are any last questions you might want to ask to Mayor Marsh, and of course I have one. and that would be, the elephant in the room is, have you decided to run?
No, I actually, last time, two years ago, I really wanted some other people to run for office, just so we got some fresh eyes on stuff. And that didn't happen until the summertime. So I didn't make up my mind till summertime, a year and a half ago, and that'll probably be the same thing now. It's, I only want to serve if I can be a voice for the people and do some good. If there's somebody that comes along that can do it better than I can, I'm happy to go be a retired 60. I'll be 67 then. I'm one of those people that needs to be on a bus route.
Well,
I did buy a home. I bought a huge home at Taft and 31st, which I intend to turn into a home share, myself and a couple of old people like myself sharing space.
Agent in place. There you go. Right on. Well, I don't really have any other questions. It doesn't look like right here. And I just want to really send out my appreciation for you and Bob and Nikki and Brett and Sam for joining us on the call today. Thank you so much for all being here. And for those of you that are on our Government Affairs Committee, if you'll all just stay on the call a little bit longer, we're going to have a really brief meeting afterwards. But again, I want to thank you for being here. Thank you all for the time today, and let's rock.
All right.
Appreciate
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
And thank you, staff,
Thank you.
for all the support. Appreciate you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Bye-bye. How do we get out of here, Brett? I can't.